Hello and welcome friends. I am Nipunika Shahid, associated with Amity University's Mass Communication Department as Assistant Professor. Earlier, I have worked for the media conglomerates like Zee News, ETV News that is currently known as TV18, Sahara Samay and in the news agency ANI. Apart from Amity University, I am also associated with Akashvani as English newsreader. Broadcasting is basically the face of mass communication. Through broadcast, media channels connect to the masses electronically via radio, television and webcasting. In the field of broadcast, students who study journalism and mass communication can take up jobs in media channels, TV and radio. The key difference between communication and mass communication is that communication refers to the overall exchange of a message or information, whereas mass communication refers to the exchange of a message or information through mass media to a large audience. So, in this edition, we will know about the communication process, public sphere theory, media effects theories, uses and gratifications theory. Communication process. Communication can best be summarized as the transmission of a message from a sender to a receiver in an understandable manner. The importance of effective communication is immeasurable in the world of business and in personal life. From a business perspective, effective communication is an absolute must because it commonly accounts for the difference between success and failure or profit and loss. It has become clear that effective business communication is critical to the successful operation of modern enterprise. Every business person needs to understand the fundamentals of effective communication. Currently, companies in the United States and abroad are working towards the realization of total quality management. Effective communication is the most critical component of total quality management. The manner in which individuals perceive and talk to each other at work about different issues is a major determinant of the business success. It has been proven that poor communication reduces quality, weakens productivity, and eventually leads to anger and a lack of trust among individuals within the organization. The communication process is the guide towards realizing effective communication. It is through the communication process that the sharing of a common meaning between the sender and the receiver takes place. Individuals that follow the communication process will have the opportunity to become more productive in every aspect of their profession. Effective communication leads to understanding. The communication process is made up of 4 key components. Those components include encoding, medium of transmission, decoding and feedback. There are also 2 other factors in the process and those 2 factors are present in the form of the sender and the receiver. The communication process begins with the sender and ends with the receiver. The sender is an individual, group or organization who initiates the communication. This source is initially responsible for the success of the message. The sender's experiences, attitudes, knowledge skills, perceptions and culture influence the message. The written words, spoken words and non-verbal language selected are paramount in ensuring the receiver interprets the message as intended by the sender, according to Burnett and Dollar, 1989. All communication begins with the sender. The first step the sender is faced with involves the encoding process. In order to convey meaning, the sender must begin encoding, which means translating information into a message in the form of symbols that represent ideas or concepts. This process translates the ideas or concepts into the coded message that will be communicated. The symbols can take on numerous forms such as languages, words or gestures. These symbols are used to encode ideas into messages that others can understand. When encoding a message, the sender has to begin by deciding what he or she wants to transmit. This decision by the sender is based on what he or she believes about the receiver's knowledge and assumptions, along with what additional information he or she wants the receiver to have. It is important for the sender to use symbols that are familiar to the intended receiver. A good way for the sender to improve encoding their message is to mentally visualize the communication from the receiver's point of view. To begin transmitting the message, the sender uses some kind of channel, also called a medium. The channel is the means used to convey the message. Most channels are either oral or written, but currently visual channels are becoming more common as technology expands. Common channels include the telephone and a variety of written forms such as memos, letters and reports. The effectiveness of the various channels fluctuates depending on the characteristics of the communication. For example, when immediate feedback is necessary, oral communication channels are more effective because any uncertainties can be cleared up on the spot. In a situation where the message must be delivered to more than a small group of people, written channels are often more effective. Although in many cases, both oral and written channels should be used because one supplements the other. If a sender relays a message through an inappropriate channel, its message may not reach the right receivers. That is why senders need to keep in mind that selecting the appropriate channel will greatly assist in the effectiveness of the receiver's understanding. The sender's decision to utilize either an oral or a written channel for communicating a message is influenced by several factors. The sender should ask him or herself different questions so that they can select the appropriate channel. Is the message urgent? Is immediate feedback needed? Is documentation or a permanent record required? Is the content complicated, controversial or private? Is the message going to someone inside or outside the organization? What oral and written communication skill does the receiver possess? Once the sender has answered all of these questions, they will be able to choose an effective channel. After the appropriate channel or channels are selected, the message enters the decoding stage of the communication process. The receiver conducts decoding. Once the message is received and examined, the stimulus is sent to the brain for interpreting in order to assign some type of meaning to it. It is this processing stage that constitutes decoding. The receiver begins to interpret the symbols sent by the sender, translating the message to their own set of experiences in order to make the symbols meaningful. Successful communication takes place when the receiver correctly interprets the sender's message. The receiver is the individual or individuals to whom the message is directed. The extent to which this person comprehends the message will depend on a number of factors, which include the following: how much the individual or individuals know about the topic, their receptivity to the message, and the relationship and trust that exists between sender and receiver. All interpretations by the receiver are influenced by their experiences, attitudes, knowledge, skills, perceptions, and culture. It is similar to the sender's relationship with encoding. Feedback is the final link in the chain of the communication process. After receiving a message, the receiver responds in some way and signals that response to the sender. The signal may take the form of a spoken comment, a long sigh, a written message, a smile, or some other action. Even lack of response is, in a sense, a form of response, according to Bowie and Thill, 1992. Without the feedback, the sender cannot confirm that the receiver has interpreted the message correctly. Feedback is a key component in the communication process because it allows the sender to evaluate the effectiveness of the message. Feedback ultimately provides an opportunity for the sender to take corrective action to clarify a misunderstood message. Feedback plays an important role by indicating significant communication barriers, differences in background, different interpretation of words, and differing emotional reactions, according to Bowie and Thill, 1992. The communication process is the perfect guide towards achieving effective communication. When followed properly, the process can usually assure that the receiver will understand the sender's message. Although the communication process seems simple, it in essence is not. Certain barriers present themselves throughout the process. Those barriers are factors that have a negative impact on the communication process. Some common barriers include the use of an inappropriate medium or channel, incorrect grammar, inflammatory words, words that conflict with body and language, and technical jargon. Noise is also another common barrier. Noise can occur during any stage of the process. Noise essentially is anything that distorts a message by interfering with the communication process. Noise can take many forms, including a radio playing in the background, another person trying to enter your conversation, and any other distractions that prevent the receiver from paying attention. Successful and effective communication within an organization stems from the implementation of the communication process. All members within an organization will improve their communication skills if they follow the communication process and stay away from the different barriers. It has been proven that individuals that understand the communication process will blossom into more effective communicators, and effective communicators have a greater opportunity for becoming a success. Media and the public sphere. The reflections on media and the public sphere draw heavily on the interpretation given by Habermas to the later concept. The alternative models that have been developed, such as Nancy Fraser's counter-publics model, also build on a Habermasian approach, although the influence of a more Moffian agonist approach is increasing. The field of communication and media studies uses the public sphere concept to make sense of the role of communication in non-institutionalized politics characterized by three dimensions: the normative versus the neutralized descriptive, the media-centric versus the society-centric, and the structuralist versus the culturalist. Public sphere theory. The ideology of the public sphere theory is that the government's laws and policies should be steered by the public sphere, and that the only legitimate governments are those that listen to the public sphere. Democratic governments rests on the capacity of and opportunity for citizens to engage in enlightened debate. Public sphere means the public sphere is the arena where citizens come together, exchange opinions regarding public affairs, discuss, deliberate, and eventually form public opinion. Private sphere. The private sphere is a certain sector of societal life in which an individual enjoys a degree of authority, unhampered by interventions from governmental or other institutions. Examples of the private sphere are family and home. Counter-public sphere. Subaltern counterpublics are discursive arenas that develop in parallel to the official public spheres and where members of subordinated social groups invent and circulated counter-discourses to formulate oppositional interpretations of their identities, interests and needs. Media effects theories. Early media studies focused on the use of mass media in propaganda and persuasion. However, journalists and researchers soon looked to behavioral sciences to help figure out the effect of mass media and communications on society. Scholars have developed many different approaches and theories to figure this out. You can refer to these theories as you research and consider the media's effect on culture. Widespread fear that mass media messages could outweigh other stabilizing cultural influences such as family and community led to what is known as the direct effects model of media studies. This model assumed that audiences passively accepted media messages and would exhibit predictable reactions in response to those messages. For example, following the radio broadcast of War of the Worlds in 1938, which was a fictional news report of an alien invasion, some people panicked and believed the story to be true. Challenges to the direct effects theory. The results of the People's Choice study challenged this model. Conducted in 1940, the study attempted to gauge the effects of political campaigns on voter choice. Researchers found that voters who consumed the most media had generally already decided for which candidate to vote, while undecided voters generally turned to family and community members to help them decide. The study thus discredited the direct effects model and influenced a host of other media theories, according to Hansen 2009. These theories do not necessarily give an all-encompassing picture of media effects, but rather work to illuminate a particular aspect of media influence. Agenda setting theory. In contrast to the extreme views of the direct effects model, the agenda setting theory of media stated that mass media determine the issues that concern the public rather than the public's views. Under this theory, the issues that receive the most attention from media become the issues that the public discusses, debates and demands action on. This means that the media is determining what issues and stories the public thinks about. Therefore, when the media fails to address a particular issue, it becomes marginalized in the minds of the public, according to Hansen. When critics claim that a particular media outlet has an agenda, they are drawing on this theory. Agendas can range from a perceived liberal bias in the news media to the propagation of cutthroat capitalist ethics in films. For example, the agenda setting theory explains such phenomena as the rise of public opinion against smoking. Before the mass media began taking an anti-smoking stance, smoking was considered a personal health issue. By promoting anti-smoking sentiments through advertisements, public relation campaigns and a variety of media outlets, the mass media moved smoking into the public arena, making it a public health issue rather than a personal health issue, according to Deering and Rogers 1996. More recently, coverage of natural disasters has been prominent in the news. However, as news coverage wanes, so does the general public's interest. Media scholars who specialize in agenda setting research study the salience or relative importance of an issue and then attempt to understand what causes it to be important. The relative salience of an issue determines its place within the public agenda, which in turn influences public policy creation. Agenda setting research traces public policy from its roots as an agenda through its promotion in the mass media and finally to its final form as a law or policy, according to Deering and Rogers 1996. Uses and gratifications theory. Practitioners of the uses and gratifications theory study the ways the public consumes media. This theory states that consumers use the media to satisfy specific needs or desires. For example, you may enjoy watching a show like Dancing with the Stars while simultaneously tweeting about it on Twitter with your friends. Many people use the internet to seek out entertainment, to find information, to communicate with like-minded individuals, or to pursue self-expression. Each of these uses gratifies a particular need, and the needs determine the way in which media is used. By examining factors of different groups' media choices, researchers can determine the motivations behind media use, according to Papakarisi 2009. A typical uses and gratifications study explores the motives for media consumption and the consequences associated with use of that media. In the case of Dancing with the Stars and tweeting, you are using the internet as a way to be entertained and to connect with your friends. Researchers have identified a number of common motives for media consumption. These include relaxation, social interaction, entertainment arousal, escape, and a host of interpersonal and social needs. By examining the motives behind the consumption of a particular form of media, researchers can better understand both the reasons for that medium's popularity and the role that the medium fills in the society. A study of the motives behind a given user's interaction with Facebook, for example, could explain the role Facebook takes in society and the reasons for its appeal. Uses and gratifications theories of media are often applied to contemporary media issues. The analysis of the relationship between media and violence that you read about in preceding sections exemplifies this. Researchers employed the uses and gratifications theory in this case to reveal a nuanced set of circumstances surrounding violent media consumption, as individuals with aggressive tendencies were drawn to violent media. Papakarisi 2009. Symbolic Interactionism. Another commonly used media theory, symbolic interactionism, states that the self is derived from and develops through human interaction. This means the way you act towards someone or something is based on the meaning you have for a person or thing. To effectively communicate, people use symbols with shared cultural meanings. Symbols can be constructed from just about anything, including material goods, education, or even the way people talk. Consequently, these symbols are instrumental in the development of the self. This theory helps media researchers better understand the field because the important role the media plays in creating and propagating shared symbols. Because of the media's power, it can construct symbols on its own. By using symbolic interactionist theory, researchers can look at the ways media affects a society's shared symbols and in turn the influence of those symbols on the individual, according to Jansen and Boyd 2010. One of the ways the media creates and uses cultural symbols to affect an individual's sense of self is advertising. Advertisers work to give certain products a shared cultural meaning to make them desirable. For example, when you see someone driving a BMW, what do you think about that person? You may assume the person is successful or powerful because of the car he or she is driving. Ownership of luxury automobiles signifies membership in a certain socio-economic class. Equally, technology company Apple has used advertising and public relations to attempt to become a symbol of innovation and non-conformity. Use of an Apple product therefore may have a symbolic meaning and may send a particular message about the product's owner. Media also propagate other non-commercial symbols. National and state flags, religious images and celebrities gain shared symbolic meanings through their representation in the media. Spiral of silence. The spiral of silence theory, which states that Those who hold a minority opinion silence themselves to prevent social isolation, explains the role of mass media in the formation and maintenance of dominant opinions. As minority opinions are silenced, the illusion of consensus grows, and so does social pressure to adopt the dominant position. This creates a self-propagating loop in which minority voices are reduced to a minimum and perceived popular opinion sides wholly with the majority opinion. For example, prior to and during World War II, many Germans opposed Adolf Hitler and his policies. However, they kept their opposition silent out of fear of isolation and stigma. Because the media is one of the most important gauges of public opinion, this theory is often used to explain the interaction between media and public opinion. According to the spiral of silence theory, if the media propagates a particular opinion, then that opinion will effectively silence opposing opinions through an illusion of consensus. This theory relates especially to public polling and its use in the media, according to Papa Caresi. Media logic. The media logic theory states that common media formats and styles serve as a means of perceiving the world. Today, the deep rooting of media in the cultural consciousness means that media consumers need to engage for only a few moments with a particular television program to understand that it is a news show, a comedy, or a reality show. The pervasiveness of these formats means that our culture uses the styles and content of these shows as ways to interpret reality. For example, think about a TV news program that frequently shows heated debates between opposing sides on public policy issues. This style of debate has become a template for handling disagreement to those who consistently watch this type of program. Media logic affects institutions as well as individuals. The modern televangelist has evolved from the adoption of television-style promotion by religious figures, while the utilization of television in political campaigns has led candidates to consider their physical image as an important part of a campaign, according to Albright and Snow 1991. Cultivation analysis. The cultivation analysis theory states that heavy exposure to media causes individuals to develop an illusory perception of reality based on the most repetitive and consistent messages of a particular medium. This theory most commonly applies to analysis of television because of that medium's uniquely pervasive, repetitive nature. Under this theory, someone who watches a great deal of television may form a picture of reality that does not correspond to actual life. Televised violent acts, whether those reported on news programs or portrayed on television dramas, for example, greatly outnumber violent acts that most people encounter in their daily lives. Thus, an individual who watches a great deal of television may come to view the world as more violent and dangerous than it actually is. Cultivation analysis projects involve a number of different areas for research, such as the differences in perception between heavy and light users of media. To apply this theory, the media content that an individual normally watches must be analyzed for various types of messages. Then, researchers must consider the given media consumers' cultural background of individuals to correctly determine other factors that are involved in his or her perception of reality. For example, the socially stabilizing influences of family and peer groups influence children's television viewing and the way they process media messages. If an individual's family or social life plays a major part in her life, the social messages that she receives from these groups may compete with the messages she receives from television. Now, we hope that you should have understood the contents of the report clearly, and after completing this, you should be able to know about the communication process, public sphere theory, media effects theories, and uses and gratifications theory. In the next session, we will discuss about the various aspects of communication like encoding and decoding, barriers to effective communication, communication theory and theories of the press and media. And that's all for today. Thanks and goodbye.